Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Brilliantly Resilient Live. We are just so excited today to bring you one of our favorite people who we met probably about a year or so ago because I actually saw her book in the Ocean City, New Jersey library. That is where I first came across Fran Hauser, who wrote the bestseller, The Myth of the Nice Girl. And when I saw the title of the book, I was like, I got to know what this is about. So we're just so delighted to have Fran. She is a media, I want to say a media mogul. Does that like work? Media mogul. She has had
Sure,
experience, right? You're a mogul. Like, let's just own it, media mogul. She has had a wonderfully amazing career with the publication of magazines, with the media world. She's an angel investor. She has a book. There's just no end to the number of accolades that we could throw your way. So we're just so delighted to have you, Fran. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
And we commented immediately on your bold, dramatic color choice of your room. For anybody who's listening to this as a podcast, it's a gorgeous, deep, rich, velvety blue. And it's just, because you're such a dramatic person. We talked about that earlier.
A dramatic person. And this is actually my guest bedroom where I'm sitting right now. But we were just saying everything has been so dramatic. So why not?
Yeah, exactly. Own the drama, folks.
Own the drama.
Yeah.
So to start off this conversation, we kind of want to know a little bit about your story. We often talk on this show about this sort of reset, rise, and the reveal of your brilliance. And often it's about people's sort of origin story, but all of us have had to deal with that reset and the rise and the reveal in more current terms. But tell us a little bit about your background, and then we want to get into all that other good stuff.
Great. So, I spent, as you mentioned earlier, many years in media. I worked for, startups like Moviefone, and big companies like Time Inc., where I was the president of digital. And so spent many, many years, there, loved it. And then I shifted over to angel investing about 7 years ago, which has been, really rewarding. It's been kind of just amazing to work with founders, entrepreneurs who are launching new products and new businesses, and not just writing the check, but really being a thought partner for them and a sounding board. So that's just been really incredible. I've invested in over 30 companies at this point. 28 of them are female founded. So I'm really focused on changing the ratio around early stage funding and the percentage of it that goes to female founders. And then I wrote this book that you noticed in the library, which I don't think I realized that. So it's awesome. Called The Myth of the Nice Girl, which is all about how you don't have to choose between kindness and strength when you lead, that those two things are not mutually exclusive. And, the book came out 2.5 years ago. It's been translated into 8 languages, which is amazing. It's so much fun to see women from all around the world, posting about the book on social media, and just to see the impact that it's made. And I was just mentioning to both of you that, it really the book launched this speaking practice for me. I've done over 150 talks over the last 2.5 years, which has just been really rewarding and amazing. And like you said, the last 9 months has been just a lot of kind of resetting and things not going exactly the way that I expected, and having to be kind of adaptable and flexible. So we can definitely get into that if you'd like.
Oh, for sure.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot. Yeah.
I'll add one thing to what this year has been, in addition to your adaptable and flexible, has been patience growing. I've had to practice patience, which is so not a strong suit of mine. Having all these unknowns has almost driven me nuts.
Well, I'm with you. And I was saying to someone the other day, I feel like I've just been engaged in so much more negative self-talk than usual.
Mm.
And that's where I have to exercise like patience with myself and compassion and cutting myself some slack, like just all of that. It's not
It-
easy.
No, but you know what? It's really interesting that you say that, because I think people who are used to being active and producing and, being right in the thick of things and, working and creating and all of that, everything was really brought to a complete and total stop about 8 months ago. Like, it was just, Kristen and I had said that when we launched our program on March the 7th, our goal was to be on stages and speak and do all that kind of stuff. And then literally the week after we did our first program, everything shut down. So you tend to think like it's interesting how we internalize all of that. Like, this is a global pandemic, and yet we end up beating ourselves up personally because we're not out doing more.
Right. We're not out doing more. We're not achieving, as much as
Yes.
we used to. Right. That's also a big part of it, because that it feels so good when you accomplish something. And there's just not as much of that, because our lives have just been taken over, right, by so many different things. I have two boys that are 8 and 10, and they're doing hybrid, where they're in school a couple days a week and then they're home the rest of the week. And, you know, I have to have capacity for them like that. I have to make room, right? So it's being really honest with myself too about what can I take on professionally right now. I feel like I've gotten much better about saying no to things. I just had a call this morning with a founder of an ed tech, an education technology company, who was really trying to convince me to join her advisory board. And I had to be really honest, with myself and say, look, that's just not my focus right now. And normally it would be probably something that I would have loved to do, because I think it would have been a great learning experience for me too. But on the investing side of my business, I'm really focused on CPG and wellness.
Mm.
And I have to really stay focused on that. So
Yeah.
it has, I think it's forced all of us to just be so much more focused and setting boundaries and really thinking about like, what do you say yes to, and what to say no to.
Well, and I think people tend to forget that when you say, this is what I started doing with myself, because I couldn't say no to anything. I was saying yes to everything. And then my kids are like, oh, so we're on the hook for our own laundry, feeding ourselves. Like, where are you? One time my son, my kids are all teens, and then I have a 20-year-old, and my son was on an interview, and I'm listening to him tell this story on a podcast. And he said, I miss everything around here. I came down to breakfast one morning and said to my sister, "Where's mom?" And she goes, "Toronto." I had to get an early flight, and somebody forgot to tell Mitchell. But when everything shut down, and we're broadcasting this in 2021, but when everything shut down in 2020, it was actually a good thing for me to regroup and figure out, where did I need to say no. And I will tell you this, Fran, and you probably noticed this too. When I said no to a lot of things, I was able to say, doors opened that I really needed to open, and was able to say yes. Because I actually got involved I was invited to a startup for the first time in my life. Never would have thought I would be involved in something like that. And it's exactly a 20-year dream come true. But if I kept all those other yeses, I never would have even had time to take the phone call.
Oh, I love that so much. Like, you literally made room for it in your life. And by the way, doesn't it feel so good after you say no? Like, it feels like such a relief.
There's the
Yeah.
weight. Yeah, the weight's off your shoulders.
The weight's off your shoulders. And it's like, even like, I don't know, sometimes I'll get invited to events. Right now they're all virtual events. But I have like a little bit of FOMO. Like, if I
Mhm.
say no, like, what am I going to miss out on? And but then I say no, and automatically I think about, wow, that's 2 hours that I'm going to have, like, on, a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, to binge watch my favorite show, or spend time with the kids, or read a book, or
Yeah.
right. So like, there's so much joy in it, as opposed to just like focusing on what am I going to miss out on?
Or the guilt of
Or the
saying
guilt.
no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Throw that out the window.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
guilt or the people pleasing, or, there's so many reasons, right?
I
Yeah.
think we've actually also come to realize how much we can do without. And when you for whatever reason, when you say no, when you start to eliminate these things, as Kristen said, and as you referenced, there are opportunities, whether it's to do something else that might be more productive or fulfill a dream, or simply to fulfill your own personal needs. Those are the kinds of things that we always put on the back level. And I will grant you, I've spent a little bit too much time thinking about my own personal needs because I had nothing else to think about, at least early on. But there is a clarity that has come with that. Like, oh, I don't need this, that, or the other thing to either be fulfilled, move me forward, whatever. And it's like a revelation.
It really is. It
Yeah.
really is. Look, we talk about the silver linings that have come out of this experience. And that is definitely one of the silver linings for me, is just the stuff that I've taken off my plate. Like Ariana Huffington
Yes.
always talks about having a to don't list. And, just there are so many more things on that to don't list. Just, things that, like you said, like they're not really moving anything forward. They don't matter. They're not important, or they're not bringing me joy. Right.
Yes.
So if it's not important, it's not bringing you joy. Like, why are you doing it? Sometimes we get into these like weird routines and habits, or we feel like we should do it, or, and so that's actually been that's been a huge silver lining for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we actually, me and Mary Fran had like a come to Jesus moments with ourselves, and said, because we're like, have all these ideas for this whole new business and model of Brilliantly Resilient, that we could take over the world from our tables in our house. We don't have to fly. So we had so much going on that we actually had a call one day, and we were like, we had to create a to don't list. We cannot possibly do all these things. What are we really good at? And it was speaking and writing. And I'm telling you, Fran, once we did that to don't list and just focused on our good things, our book lands on the top 100 bestsellers next to Deepak Chopra. Right?
Deepak's scratching his head right now going, who the heck are these?
Who are these people next to me on Amazon? And we're like,
That's
hey,
incredible. Congratulations.
all that to don't, like, yes, we're talented and we have ideas out the wazoo that we could really benefit a lot of people, but we weren't doing a couple of things really well. So we
Yep.
just
Yeah.
focused there. And then
It's
Right, well.
and what's so crazy is, like, we know this, right? We know this. Like, we know it,
Yeah.
but then we start going crazy with like all of our ideas. It happens to me all the time, I could do this and I could do that and I could and the list just keeps growing. And then you get into the overwhelmed stage, because then you're looking at the list and you're like, I can't possibly do all of this, right? And then when you realize, wait, these are the two things, it's the speaking and the writing, that's what we're going to focus on. And it unleashed, right?
Yes.
All of these
Yeah.
amazing, exciting things and outcomes.
This
So
is
yeah, it's so important.
this is so intertwined with everything that you talk about, though. And Kristen had mentioned the guilt part of it. And I kind of want to bring this back to your whole idea of you can still be nice and say no, and you can still be nice and treat people with respect and kindness, but respect your own boundaries and your own brilliance, which is kind of our tie-in, because it would be wonderful if we could, kind of clone ourselves and then put those clones in the closet to do all of these other things.
Yeah.
But when there's a certain amount of hours in the day, a certain amount of energy, and there are certain places where you shine, it ultimately, even though it might not feel like it to other people, it ultimately benefits everyone. If you say, no, that's not my space.
It really is. It's a gift. Like, I have founders who are working on their fundraising right now. They're raising money, and they reach out to potential investors. They ask them, are they interested in looking at the pitch, hearing the pitch? And then these investors will string the founders along, like, whether if they're going to invest or they're not going to invest. So it's this like weird place. Founders will always say to me that how much they appreciate a no, because then they can just move on.
Right.
Like they can just like put that investor in the no list, and it's no for now, right? Maybe like in a year you could go back, maybe your business is too early, maybe whatever, but they appreciate the no because then they can move on. And that's like the worst thing when you're stringing people along because you're afraid, like you're afraid that you might hurt their feelings, or like you kind of want to keep the door open. It's such a gift to say no. And the other thing I say is that I talk about this a lot. As women, we have this tendency of feeling like we need to over explain when we're saying no. Like, you don't need to write a 3-paragraph email. You can literally say no in 2 lines, you
Yep.
know, and you can always talk about kindness, right? By saying thank you, right? Thank you for thinking of me. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for whatever it is. And just let the person know, like, look, I'm heads down right now working on building my business or writing this book or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I won't be able to participate at this time, but and just wrap it up with best wishes. And it's 2 lines. It's literally, don't you guys see that where sometimes it's like, oh my God, I have to like write a dissertation to support or
I
to
know.
justify like why I'm saying no. I overheard my husband on the phone the other day saying no. And he literally just said, no, that doesn't work for me right now.
And that was it. End of conversation.
You're like, wait, that's an option?
You still have 27 minutes left to continue.
I know exactly. Like,
Don't you want my 3-hour explanation of this?
but I was kind of jealous. I'm like, I like the fact that he could just do that. Like, no, that doesn't work for me right now. And so that's my other kind of thing that I really like to encourage women to do is, first of all, say no more, right? Because you have to really be protective of your time and your energy.
Mhm.
So say no more, and you don't need to over explain. You can say no in like a minute or less.
Yeah, and I feel like part of that desire to over explain is being nice in the not productive way. And I think that's one of the things, like when you talk about being nice, it's still about being kind, it's still about being respectful, but it's not about people pleasing.
Yeah, there's a huge difference, right? Like being kind and being nice and being empathetic, all of those things are really important in life and in business, because when you are those things, that really they allow you to develop relationships with people in a deeper way, right? Because you're showing that you care about them, you're respectful of them, you care about their ideas and their points of view, and that allows you to build trust and to build relationships. So those things, there's so much power to kindness and to empathy, and to being nice. But the downside of it is exactly, Mary Fran, what you just talked about, which is you don't want to veer into that people pleasing territory, because then that's where you start getting taken advantage of, and really being perceived as more of a pushover. Like, oh, Fran will do it, like she'll
Right.
she can't say no, she says yes to everything, like just ask her to do it, like, so that's not productive. And
So let me ask you this. How much of this, and this has been something that I've started to rely on way more frequently, is kind of a gut feeling for you? Like, how much do you go, this doesn't feel right? And I think that, we want to encourage women to use their brains, to think logically, to do all that. But to me, there's still a part of it that ultimately comes back to this doesn't feel like a good fit. Do
oh,
you
it's
do you rely on that?
it's huge. I have to tell you, when I think about bad decisions that I've made, like the worst decisions that I've made in my career, and I go back to like you do a little postmortem, like what would I have done differently?
Mhm.
The common thread is that I didn't listen to my gut.
Oh,
Is
why
that
would
I met, I remember meeting like this woman who I ended up investing in, her business, and I had such an off feeling in my gut about, like, something didn't sit right, but I got so wrapped up in all of the A-list investors and influencers that she had surrounded herself with, like all of these people were investing in her, they were advising her. And I just got so wrapped up in that I wasn't paying attention to how I was feeling, like little things. Like I noticed she wasn't really taking any of my feedback. Like I would share feedback with her and she was very dismissive of it. You know, it was things like that. Like it ended up being a terrible investment. But literally that is the common thread, is that I didn't listen to my gut. I always say, like, when I make a decision, I like data. I really like taking in data. I like talking to different people and, getting different pieces of data, using my brain. But then the ultimate decision is made with my gut.
I love that.
One of the things that I've actually learned from Mary Fran in doing this show and writing the book is, and coming up with all these brilliantly resilient programs, is that part of our reset is tuning into our values. And I had never considered that before. And then when I do the same thing, when I look back on the bad decisions and people that I brought in, every single one I can point to, I was choosing proximity to them as opposed to my core values of me as a person, a mom, and a business owner. Every single time it was proximity was over all of my true values. And now I have to stay very conscious of that because, I grew a nonprofit from nothing to being known around the world, and you need proximity. You need that. But when you put that above your core stuff, that's when it all falls apart.
Yeah. I totally agree. That's such an important insight. I never thought about it that way, even just using that word proximity. It's
It's
brilliant.
so hard though, especially, you're there, you're going to be with those A-listers and it's like, oh, that could really grow. But then when it all falls apart on the one end, it's like,
Well, because you know what you're doing, which is interesting, or what I was doing in that situation is I wasn't valuing my own gut as much as I was valuing the fact that, well, all of these really brilliant people are on board. So like, I must be wrong.
yeah.
Right, right,
They've,
right, right.
they've all made the decision to get on board. So like, there's something, I must be the one that's wrong. They've got to be right, and then, so I suppressed my own intuition and my values, by the way, right? Because if you have a weird gut feeling about something, that means that your values aren't aligned,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Your values are
Yeah.
not aligned.
And
So
ultimately, even if the thing, whatever it is, ends up being successful, there's still going to be a part of it that's not going to sit well with you. And I think we tend to look at these things like you're saying, here's an opportunity with all these big people, and that's where I want to be. So I have to do this. But the truth of the matter is there will be other opportunities. There will be, and it might take you a little longer. It might not be the leap that you think, but this is to bring this full circle back to that idea of patience. Like you have to be patient and wait for that thing that aligns with you, or it's just not going to work.
I it's really interesting. I don't know if you guys have ever taken the Myers-Briggs personality test, right? I took it a few times, especially earlier on when I was in corporate, and I would always score off the charts on it's the last one. It's the J is all about closure. Like I really like closure to things, right? And the opposite of that is being a perceiver, which is you're comfortable with just kind of like, leaving things open. And one of the things that I've really had to train myself on is being a little bit more patient and kind of just letting things sit for a little bit, right? Because my nature is like, I want to check it off the list.
You are speaking her language.
Right?
She just wants those checkbooks.
Oh,
Right. It feels so good. Like I just
I
want
lived with a drug addict for a long time. I didn't get to check anything off. So I have to agree with you that was my personality, but my baptism by fire was, well, it's just not going to work out that way today. So you got to look at it a different way. And ultimately, again, the experience sucked, not a blessing, but ultimately it did teach me that. And that's so important.
It's so important. I've really like just I do that more now. I just kind of say, you know what? This just doesn't feel right. Let's just let it sit for a little bit. Let's just see what happens. Um and I'm much better. I'm more comfortable, but it took years. I mean, it really took years
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still
and I
on that
be
journey.
intentional. It's hard,
It
man.
is hard, but
Yeah.
you know what? When you can sit and let things evolve, very often problems unknot themselves
Yeah.
without your overt constant worrying and fretting and your influence and all that. Very often these are things that are maybe not up to you to solve in the first place. Again, going back to my experience with my son, I could want what I wanted till the cows came home, but it wasn't in my power. So, you talked also earlier about what can I do? And sometimes what you can do in the immediate moment is nothing.
Nothing.
And you have to sit and wait and let these things evolve. And this other thing that Kristen and I say all the time is not be married to an outcome. Because unless you're living on an island and you're just doing this all yourself, there are going to be other variables.
Absolutely. And the other thing that just sort of really struck me recently is you can make a good decision, but still have a bad outcome. Does that
Mm,
make sense? Like you can
yeah.
really make a good,
Yes.
like you can think about it the right way. You could take in all the data. You could weigh the risks. You could be really thoughtful about it. Listen to your gut. Go through your process, which works for you, your decision-making process. But then, you know what? Sometimes like a global pandemic can happen. Or, right, like something completely out of your control, an external circumstance,
Yeah.
anything could happen that,
Yep.
you know, outcome, right?
Mhm.
So I think also just realizing that cutting yourself a little bit of slack there too. Like you can take it so far, right? But then sometimes stuff happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of stuff happens, and we're talking about, saying no to things. Let's go into the piece of your journey where the world said no to you with a big plan that you had in 2020. You had to shift gears. Because we were talking about that story before we came on the air, and I want our listeners to hear that.
Yeah. So pre-COVID, I was working on opening a bookstore in my town with one of my really good friends. And like we were really far down the path. We had the location selected, we had the architectural drawings done, we got the building permit. We even had like the planogram done, which is, the bookshelves and, what genres we're going to carry. I mean, we were really
Wow.
far down the path. And it was probably one of the most joyful projects I think that I've really ever worked on because I love reading so much and I love books. And it's like one of those things ever since I was a little girl, my mother would come into my room and I would be sitting on the floor of my bedroom with my back up against my bed reading.
Mm.
And so reading and books have always brought me so much joy. And so it was just so fun to like work on, a physical presence.
Mhm.
Um, but of course, COVID hit and now is not the right time. We felt like to open up a brick and mortar retail store, which is really all about bringing the community together. And it was a real loss, like, having to say, like, now is not the right time. And we kept, God, this was last spring, right? So at first we're like, well, let's give it a few months, maybe we'll be able to like open, by the end of the summer. And then it was the fall. And so, we kept kind of putting it off. And then I finally decided to just like, okay, I'm just going to sit. I'm just going to sit with this. Something's going to happen. And then I just got the idea a couple of months ago to launch a bookstagram, which I did. It's called Fran's Bookshelf. And, I just thought this would be such a great, like, creative channel and outlet for me to share my love of books and reading. It's a way for me to do it, to take photos and to write book reviews and to build a community, but
Wow.
to do that instead of doing it physically,
Mhm.
um, to do it over Instagram. And I launched it a few weeks ago. It has been so much fun. It's just been such an incredible creative outlet. I've really enjoyed it. And, I was saying to you before, like it's so small compared to a physical brick and mortar,
Mhm.
it's such a, but it's feeding me. I think it's actually feeding me like just as much as a bookstore would have.
Wow.
So I think that was like a really big pivot and reset.
Mhm.
And, it's also, here's the other thing, it's taking a fraction of my time. I was talking to Kristen, who, we were working on the bookstore together, and we were really talking about like the operations of a bookstore and like, it's a big deal. And I have other parts of my professional life too, right? So it's not like was going to be my 24/7 thing. So I'm spending a fraction of the time on this bookstagram, and I'm probably getting like just as much joy out of it. So
Well, and you get
it's
to
really
do
been a
it,
gift.
you get to focus on the part you love. Like that's one of the things that in, I guess in any profession that you choose, there are going to be parts of it that you just don't like doing. I mean, it's, like I'll write books all day long, but please don't make me market them. But that's part of it. So you get the best of it. And I mean, I think this has been the lesson that's come out of all of this. Those tweaks, those pivots that you have to make in your plan can ultimately end up being very fulfilling, but you have to be willing to lower the wall. You have to be willing to stop saying, why did this happen? And I can't do what I want, and that's not always easy.
It's true. And it's also like just start small. I don't know. I feel like over the course of my career, I really, kind of got used to working on these like big projects, that have just like huge impact, sometimes globally, or like big products and it can be just as rewarding, to work on something that isn't at that scale, like it's just sort of changing your mindset. And it's actually, here's another interesting insight is when I launched the Bookstagram, I had several of my friends and colleagues reach out to say, well, how are you monetizing this? Like, how is this, you know, what's the business part of this? And I said to them, I'm not monetizing it, like maybe something might come out of it that's more kind of business focused. But for right now, like I actually really feel okay with the idea of it simply being a creative outlet.
Yeah.
Right. But like, because my friends know me, they know that I'm a business person and they're like,
Yeah.
Where's the money? Like, how are you making money off of this? How are you making money? And it's like, it's okay for it not to be about the money.
Yeah, you're right. But sometimes it just evolves to that. Cause that's how when we started Brilliantly Resilient, we're like, it's not like we're getting paid to be on our own stage. And we just wanted to, but we wanted to continue serving and do something. Of course, then for a while there, I'm like, I think this is actually my therapy. I think started this to fix Kristen's mind and life because I was benefiting so much as a mom and a person. And then, everything switched for me. And now Mary Fran and I are just on this trajectory up of all of it is falling into place when we didn't, but Mary Fran is constant. I'm going to get her a t-shirt that says, don't be married to the outcome. Because I'm all about the outcome and the box, checking it off at the end. And that's what we had to let go of and then just see where it went and continue serving, which is our biggest value that we share is service. And,
Service.
and
I
then
love
what's
that.
happening now.
I love that. And
Yeah,
you should get a t-shirt made that says that.
I am going to get
I
that.
would buy
Oh,
that
there's a
t-shirt.
lot of t-shirts that she
There's
could
a
have.
lot of t-shirts coming.
Some of them we can't actually put in print for public consumption, some of my t-shirt sayings, but that one we can.
For sure. Merch. There's going to be a whole merch business. I see it.
I can see it.
Mary
Oh
Fran
my
merch.
gosh. That would be so fun. Well, Fran,
so
this has
great.
been, as I knew it would be, a delightfully illuminating and empowering conversation. I feel like you address, whenever I talk to you, you address every part of sort of the female psyche, like our minds, our feelings, are all of that stuff. But you address it in such a way that allows us to be fully human, fully present, fully engaged. And I so appreciate that. So before we sign off, I want everybody to know where they can get some more of Fran Hauser. So tell us, please.
Yeah, so the website is franhauser.com, really simple. And my new bookstagram is at Fran's Bookshelf.
I can't wait to
We are
check that
definitely
out.
going to be checking that out for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. This
You
has
ladies
been,
are amazing. Congratulations on everything. So
Thank
excited
oh,
for
thanks.
you.
Right back at you.
Yeah, we're having a lot of fun.
This has been just what the community needed to launch our most brilliant year yet, which is what 2021 is, coming off of the 2020 reset of a lifetime. And now the most brilliant year yet. You really kicked us off, Fran. I love it. I knew that you would, and I can't stop smiling. I'm such a nerd because you really, just so many different points of resetting, rising, and revealing your brilliance. So thanks so much for spending the time with us.
Thank you for having me.
See you soon, everybody. We will be back with more brilliance for making 2021 your most brilliant year yet.
Go to brilliantlyresilient.net and see all of the things that you can take advantage of to do that for yourself. See you next time.
Bye.